originally there's a character, Jean Grey. Jean Grey becomes the Phoenix, becomes the Dark Phoenix, blows up a whole planet full of aliens. This happens. The Lover. One of my favorite moments. I love Dark Phoenix. Oh my God. That was like, I had a big crush on Dark Phoenix. Like, oh, you can torture me, baby. So anyway, the editor at the time is like, yo, y'all just had her blow up a whole planet full of people. She can't get off with this, fam. Because
she can't get away with
this. Because the original intention for Chris Claremont was he was going to take the character, she would be depowered, and her and Scott would leave the X-Men and go live happily ever after. The editor's like, nigga, please.
How dare you?
Blew up a planet full of people.
That's on some Scarlet Witch shit. Like, how you get away with that shit?
Yeah, she got to die. So Chris and them were mad about this, but they changed their story, and Jean Grey dies and sacrifices herself at the end of the story. Scott's hurt. He leaves the X-Men, goes back to Alaska where he's from, and while working at his parents' airline in Alaska, meets this woman, Madelyne Pryor, who strongly resembles Jean, and at the same time survived a plane crash on the same day that Jean became the Phoenix in the first place. So there's all these weird things.
Suspicious.
It's super suspicious. But what Chris Claremont, the creator of Madelyne Pryor's original intention for the character was, he had all this build up, where people think she's Jean reborn up until I think it's X-Men 175 is the big anniversary issue. When all this to find out that it was one of the X-Men's old foes, Mastermind, who's an illusionist, kind of manipulating the situation to make it seem like that. But she was really just a normal woman. Her and Scott got married. They moved back to Alaska and lived happily ever after. And that was Chris Claremont's original intention because he wanted the X-Men to grow and change and for Scott to have his happy ending since it got taken away from him when they made him kill Jean. Right? So he wanted them to be gone from the X-Men happily ever after. Occasionally Scott would show up, do some special missions. But for the most part, boom, they're off the table. Maybe a year or so later, someone gets a bright idea to bring Jean Grey back and bring the original 5 X-Men, Cyclops, Beast, Angel, and Jean back together. And at first the idea was they were going to do the original 4 with Dazzler, this other character. But then they were like, that'd be corny. Well, let's just bring Jean back to life, right? But it hadn't been done at this point. Remember, at this point, Jean had been dead for like 10 years in comics, and real time, and it wasn't like now where people just come back to life, especially a character like Jean Grey. That was just something that people thought she was dead forever. Scott's married to Madelyne. Chris Claremont's pissed about this. He doesn't want to write that book, but he eventually does it because he doesn't want somebody else to do it. So he writes this book where Jean Grey comes back to life. It was revealed that the Phoenix had faked her death and put her off in Transylvania like it happened with this one. And with the Phoenix was like our whole other person. So it wasn't Jean's fault that planet got blown up. Scott finds out Jean's back to life. Absolves her
wrongdoing.
Of her wrongdoing, white women shit. Yeah. Scott finds out that Jean is back to life, leaves his wife and baby boy in.
Bitch ass nigga.
Yeah, I know. This was their, like. It's funny. This is like the original point when people like it ruined Scott as a character for years. This was his bitch ass moment, and it was so foul that it's like. And a lot of people came in the comments around this time, so Scott was always this bitch nigga because of that. And I can't. It was terrible writing. It was like character assassination. So this nigga leaves Jean. Leaves Madelyne, goes with Jean, and this is when shit gets super weird because it's comics. Madelyne eventually makes a deal with some fucking demons, turns into the Goblin Queen, creates this whole situation called Inferno where demons invade New York. At the end of it, gets murdered. Jean absorbs her memories, and it, puts it where Scott can eventually marry Jean, and they can be the couple that we all know and love today. So this episode
very
basically
Scarlet Witchy in the Hex.
Yeah, super. Yeah, with the No More Mutants and all that. Yeah, definitely.
And
super
imaginary children. So.
There you go too. Yeah, definitely. Well, and that's funny because John Byrne wrote that story, or a lot of that. Well, he didn't write the imaginary children shit, but he eventually did a Scarlet Witch. He made Scarlet Witch like Dark Phoenix, which assassinated her character for years. People just love fucking shit up, basically. But Long story short, the original plan for Madelyne Pryor was for her to let Scott have a happy ending. And Chris Claremont never got to do that, just like he never got to do his original plans for Gambit and Mr. Sinister, like we talked about before. And so, because of that, Madelyne for years and is still operating in the X-Men to this day as the Goblin Queen. So that's like become her new character, and that's who she's known as. Shout out to the Goblin Queen, because like just as much a crush I had on Jean Grey when she showed up in that leather as a kid, boy, I was a Madelyne Pryor fan. Redheads and black leather look, you know. I'm
I
a
hear
simple
you.
man.